I would like to thank Edward Hale and the Bethpage Library for this opportunity to perform for you. Music of the Great American Songbook is music that was written from the 1920s through the 1950s, with a couple of exceptions later on. Cute little story. I'm not the kind of musician who loved doing this as a child. Actually, I hated piano lessons. So to make me practice, my mother came up with a plan that if I didn't practice on Monday, I had a plate of spinach for dinner. Tuesday was broccoli, Wednesday was cauliflower, and Thursday was lima beans. Friday, Saturday, Sunday was anything that I didn't eat during the week. So to rebel, I took a nail, and on the side of the piano I carved in big letters, "I hate the piano." And I wound up practicing standing up. My father had a big belt which he used on my rear end for my artwork, and wound up standing up practicing. I'm in 7th grade, a skinny little kid, and I'm getting a new piano teacher. And I meet her, and she's blonde and 6'1", and I instantly fell in love. At the end of the lesson, she said, "I want you to practice." I practiced 6 hours a day for her. During the summer, I practiced for 10 hours a day for her. At one point during the lesson, she said that she loves Mozart symphonies. And do I love Mozart? Now, you know what the answer is that going to be. Of course, I love Mozart. Had no idea who Mozart was. She said, "If I give you my favorite Mozart symphony in an album to take home, would you listen to it?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely." So she gave me her favorite Mozart symphony. It's a 33 1/3 record. And I didn't have a record player, so I went to my neighbor's house and I said, "Can I please use your record player? I have to listen to this Mozart symphony." And she puts me in a room with her record player. And about a half an hour later, she comes in and she says, "Stan, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm listening to a Mozart symphony." She said, "That's a 33 1/3 album. You're playing it at 16.5 speed." Well, my piano teacher said at another lesson, "Do I like opera?" And again, you know what the answer is. Of course, I love opera. No idea what opera was. And she said she had a date to go to the Metropolitan Opera House, and she was going to take me along with her. And I figured, wow, I'm going along with her and her date to the opera. I'm going to sit next to the love of my life. So I had a newspaper route at that time, and I saved up enough money that I was going to take them out to the spiffiest restaurant in Manhattan that I could possibly find. And I did my research. We finished the opera. I called a cab over. I gave him the address of where to take us, and the cab dropped us off at this magnificent restaurant called White Castle. A nightingale sang in Berkeley Square, and all the things you are. Starting off with all the things you are. When I was first married and had no money in the world, on a Sunday, my piano tuner got in touch with me and said, Stan, Eddy Duchin'S piano is being auctioned off this coming Wednesday at an estate in Great Neck. And I'd like you to go tomorrow morning to these people and ask them, beg, whatever you have to do, that you can use Eddy Duchin'S piano. Just play it for 5 minutes because you're never going to play something like this again. So I got to the place 9 o'clock the next morning, and I said to these people, I understand you have Eddy Duchin'S piano, and I would like to play it for 5 minutes. And they kind of looked at me like I had two heads. So I guess they felt sorry for me, and they said 5 minutes, and then you have to leave. So I said, fine. So I started playing, and they put 2 chairs next to me, and they sat. And I played the piano the entire morning. And they said, would you like to have lunch with us? So I said, can I play the piano in the afternoon? So I played the piano for the whole afternoon. Then they said, would you like to have dinner with us? I said, can I play the piano after dinner? And I played the piano from 9 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. At that point, I said, this has been the greatest day in my life. I can't thank you enough for this. And then they said, would you like to take part in the auction Wednesday? And I said, there's no way I could raise enough money even to start. I think the opening bid at the time was $10,000. And they said, how much money do you have? I said, in the whole world, I have $400. And they walked out of the room. And I felt bad because here these people were nice enough to let me play their piano all day long, and I just insulted them. And about a minute later, they came back and they said, if you show up tomorrow morning with $400 and a moving company, the piano is yours. I said, I can't accept that. And they said, no, tomorrow morning, and they left. So as soon as I got home, I started calling friends. I borrowed the money. I got $400. I showed up with a moving company, and I got Eddy Duchin'S piano. And that's what I'm playing. And many of the songs that you're hearing today are things that Eddy Duchin has played. This is a medley of Stardust and Deep Purple. This Stardust was composed by Hoagy Carmichael in 1927, and it was really first recorded as a peppy, up-tempo song, and it got very little response. In 1930, band leader Isham Jones recorded it as a sentimental ballad, and it became an instant hit. Deep Purple was the biggest hit of composer Peter DeRose. Larry Clinton and his orchestra recorded it in 1938, and it was a #1 hit for 9 weeks on Popular Music. So here's a medley of Stardust and Deep Purple. I used to work in the supper clubs in Manhattan and the Sheraton Hotel chain. And this one particular Sheraton Hotel, it was the Mermaid Room at the Park Sheraton Hotel in Midtown Manhattan. And they had a piano in the middle of the bar on a rotating stage. And above me was an alcove with about 50 spotlights that would be shining down on me. And this was the beginning of the summer I started the performance. And at the end, or the middle of the second week, I wound up, for some reason or other, having to change tuxedo shirts near the end of the evening. So I didn't quite understand what that was all about. By the third and fourth week, I was now changing tuxedo shirts in the middle of the night because I was becoming sweaty and it was becoming uncomfortable. By the end of the summer, I was changing tuxedo shirts 3 times every night that I was performing. It turns out that whoever was the electrical person who replaced these spotlights, and every week 1 or 2 or 3 spotlights would go out, so he would replace them. But instead of replacing them with spotlights, he replaced them with heat lamps. So by the end of the summer, I probably had 30 to 35 heat lamps coming down on me during the air conditioning, and I was literally roasting. That place, the Mermaid Room, and then there was another Sheraton on the west side called the Carousel Room, whereby the piano was on another circular turning, it was rotating platform, and people sat on the platform with me. So you had chairs that were off the platform, but the piano, in both cases, the piano would turn clockwise. So whenever I would get off from the piano to take a break, I would round up walking and turning clockwise as I'm walking. And when I went to bed at night, I would be turning and I'd be constantly falling out of bed. And this happened for weeks at both performances. The Way You Look Tonight was Jerome Kern and Dorothy Fields, and it was performed by Fred Astaire singing to Ginger Rogers in the movie Swing Time. Watch What Happens is another great American songbook, and it's by Michel Legrand from The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and this is one of those songs that were written after the 1950s. So this is the medley of both. When I was working in the supper clubs, during the day I was an actor on NBC, the soap opera Another World, Bay City in Somerset. That was Channel 4. And we used to film at the NBC studios on Avenue M in Brooklyn. So we would film from 9 to 5, and then at 5 o'clock I would run into Manhattan and start appearing on stage by 6:30. Well, the only night that I did not perform in Manhattan was Monday. But on Monday, I was hosting several radio shows, and I was doing all of the commercials, the voiceover commercials for the radio shows. So on this one particular Monday, I said to my wife, why don't you meet me in Manhattan, and after we do the filming, we'll go out to dinner, and then we'll go to the radio show together. And that particular day, I was in a bit of a rush getting out, so I had a cup of coffee for breakfast, that was it. And during the filming, they had changed the script, so I had no lunch, and wound up at 5 o'clock on my way to Manhattan, met my wife at the restaurant, and I decided to relax for doing the radio show with a double martini, okay? And this is not the best thing to do on an empty stomach with just a cup of coffee. So a double martini and a steak, and halfway during dinner, a second double martini. And at the end of the dinner, the maitre d' comes over and offers a complimentary cordial, which I accepted. We get to the radio station, and again, I'm doing all the commercials, and we have the whole staff there. And the first commercial is for Vesuvio Restaurant. Prime ribs of beef was the specialty. And I start doing the voiceover for the commercial as Vesuvio Restaurant, prime zibs of reef. It took me 1 hour to be able to get the first commercial done. The director kept pouring coffee into me. The staff was hysterical. I couldn't get one commercial right. Every time I made a mistake, they would be hysterical. The director would become livid. I'm now delaying the radio show. They had people that were to be interviewed. So only when you're young, you do something like that. My one and only love, Where or When, and East of the Sun. My one and only love, this is very special to me because this particular song has been selected by Radio Swiss Jazz in Switzerland as being played daily on their playlist. And that's from my piano album, Music to Drive By. My one and only love, Where or When, and East of the Sun. Hope you enjoy it. Many of you are going to remember the Joe Franklin television show. Joe Franklin was king of television on Channel 9 at that particular time. And I appeared on his show many times. The first time I was on his show, I got there extra early. I figured he doesn't know much about me, so he's going to chat with me and we'll find out what we're going to talk about. Joe Franklin doesn't show up to the studio until 5 minutes to 12. At the time, his show was live, went on live at 12 noon. So he shows up at the studio 5 to 12, has absolutely no idea of who is going to be with him that particular day. So he gets to the studio, he does his opening, they do a commercial, and he's reading something. And as soon as we go back live, he says, Stan has been with us here all morning. He's currently doing a show in Manhattan nightly, and he's been practicing here to do something very special for you. We have a silent movie of the Keystone Cops, and Stan has been here all morning creating the background music for this. I had no idea what he was talking about. I'm placed over at the piano, and there's a television monitor at the piano, and the director says, okay, Stan, in 5 seconds we start the Keystone Cops silent movie. You'll see it. Play the music behind it. I had to make up the music for the Keystone Cops. Never having seen it before, never knew, and this was live on television, had no clue of what was going on. And this was typical Joe Franklin every time I did his show. This is a great medley. This is Moon River, Over the Rainbow, When You Wish Upon a Star, and Someday My Prince Will Come. Moon River has a great story. Audrey Hepburn starred in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and Moon River was in the show, and the director wanted to cut it out. He said the song was too slow, it was not commercial, and he didn't like it. He didn't like the song. Audrey Hepburn loved the song, and she threatened to walk off the movie set if they cut it out. So to keep her happy, they kept the song in Breakfast and Tiffany's, and it won the Grammy for the best song of the year. Over the Rainbow, this is 1939, Judy Garland, Wizard of Oz, and the two Walt Disney shows, When You Wish Upon a Star is from Pinocchio, and Someday My Prince Will Come, and it's a medley of all four. of the songs that I'm performing today are in my album, Music to Drive By, which is music of the Great American Songbook. Before I do a Cole Porter medley, when I was appearing in the supper clubs in Manhattan, there's one particular supper club, super elegant. I'm not going to mention the name of it. It's something you would recognize right away. And they had a beautiful piano bar, and they had a gorgeous grand piano. And I was booked there for 6 nights a week. On the opening night, I sat down at the piano, and I noticed the left leg of the piano was missing. The piano was being held up by a 2x4. And the part of the piano leg was still there, but it looked like it was chewed off. And then on the floor was this huge soup bone. And this just didn't make sense in this gorgeous supper club on the east side of Manhattan. So I figured, all right, let's go with it. The piano wasn't wobbling, it was stable. And I'm playing about an hour and a half, and I figured I will take a stretch. And I was about to get up, and I hear this, and I look down, and right next to me is this mangy-looking German shepherd chewing on the soup bone. And he wasn't letting me get up from the piano. I figured, I'll just keep playing. So played another hour and a half, and I figured now I really need to stretch the legs. The dog would not let me get up. I played the whole night without taking a break. At the end of the night, I got one of the waiters, and I said, could you tell me what happened to the piano and what's going on with the dog? And the waiter said, the dog did not like the last piano player that we had, so he chewed off the piano leg. Needless to say, I did not go back to the second night. I didn't get paid. That was the end of it. Medley of Night and Day, Begin the Begin, and I've Got You Under My Skin. These are Cole Porter. Cole Porter was just about the only composer who wrote all the music as well as the lyrics. He was riding a horse at the Piping Rock Country Club here on Long Island when the horse fell on top of him and his legs were crushed. While he was under the horse, he took out a notebook and he wrote the song At Long Last Love. While he was on a cruise ship to Fiji, he was bored, so in the afternoon he wrote the music to Begin the Begin. And that evening he wrote the words. That song is very special to me because unbeknownst to me, when my wife brought her parents to see me perform for the first time at the location I was playing, when she came in with her mother and father, I was playing Begin the Begin, and I did not know that was her father's most favorite song in the world. So I got the approval. So this is Night and Day, Begin the Begin, and I've Got You Under My Skin. One of the concerts that I did upstate New York at the Glove Performing Arts Center, it was snowing and I needed a pair of snow boots. So the next day after the concert, I went to the local Walmart and I picked up this pair of snow boots. And the lines at the checkout were about 25 to 30 people long. And I figured, is this really worth it to spend an hour online just to pick up a pair of snow boots? The last register was empty, and a woman goes over to the register and starts opening it up, and she points to me. She said, "You, come here." I said, "You know me?" She said, "Yes, come on over." I think this is my lucky day. I'm going to avoid standing online for an hour. And she said to me, "Do you know why I selected you?" And I figured, well, maybe she was at the program the night before. So instead of saying something about that, I'll let her tell me that she enjoyed the program. And she said to me, "I'm looking for a husband, and you look like a good fit." No comment. This is Autumn Leaves, 1947, Johnny Mercer. Cole Porter, It's All Right With Me. Beethoven wrote a sonata called Sonata in F minor, which starts like this. It's all right with me. If we combine Beethoven and Cole Porter, we get this. by Barclay Allen. One of the stories, I never had the opportunity of meeting George Gershwin, but I had a close relationship. I was performing at the Park Sheraton Hotel, and Maitre d', after one of my breaks, said, "There's a gentleman who would like to chat with you." And I went over to him, and after about 5 minutes, I'm talking to him, and he says to me, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And I said, "No, I don't." And the maitre d' taps me and says, "Stan, you just played 2 of his songs during your last set. This is Mr. Caesar." And I figured, this is not Sid Caesar. I said, "You're not Irving Caesar." And he said, "Yes, Irving Caesar was George Gershwin's lyricist before Ira Gershwin took over. He was George Gershwin's boyhood friend, and he wrote the lyrics to Swanee. George Gershwin wrote the song Swanee in 15 minutes on a bus. Ira Gershwin wrote the lyrics in 15 minutes. I was mortified that I didn't know who he was, and I have no idea what I played the rest of the night. The next morning, I got a phone call from Irving Caesar's office saying Mr. Caesar wanted to meet with me the next day at 9 o'clock. So I never went to sleep that night. I stayed up all night long trying to think of all of the excuses why I didn't know who he was. And the next morning at 9 o'clock, I went into his office, and before I said anything, he hands me this pile of music and said, "Go home, start practicing. We go into rehearsals next week." And I said, "For what?" He said he was doing a show, a one-man show across the United States of the songs he wrote with George Gershwin, and I was going to accompany him. And I said, "I can't do this. I'm at the Park Sheraton Hotel." He said, "I already took care of it. You have a leave of absence, so go home and start rehearsing." So we rehearsed, And I had this notebook with all the leads for all of the information for all of the songs in the order. And we went over and over and over it. We opened up the first night at the Richmond Coliseum in Richmond, Virginia, in front of 20,000 people. I've never seen 20,000 people in my life. And it's just him and I on stage. And before we start, he says to the audience, we're here in the Deep South, and Stan has a special surprise for you. He's going to play his arrangement of Dixie. This is... I've never played Dixie in my life. And I'm sitting there in front of 20,000 people trying to figure out, how does Dixie go? And somehow I got through this. He started then into the first song, but it wasn't the first song in the list. It was a song from the middle of the pile. So with my left hand, I'm trying to play, and I'm trying to find the music, and I figured, well, maybe he got nervous and he just went to the wrong song. He never did anything in the order of what we rehearsed. For all of his shows, nothing was done in the order of rehearsal, and he even put in songs that we never rehearsed. So that was my closest associationship with George Gershwin through his lyricist, Irving Caesar. Enjoyed this program as much as I enjoyed preparing it for you. I want to thank once again Mr. Edward Hale and the Bethpage Library for this opportunity to perform for you. Have a great afternoon.